Step into the haunted Blackpine Hollow Trail in Allegheny National Forest, Pennsylvania, where cursed woods, eerie forests, and missing hikers hide unspeakable horrors. You're listening to ASMR for 404 Found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Never thought the trailhead tucked in the backwoods of West Virginia would stick with me the way it has, but the memory of it clings like mud on old boots. No matter how many times I try to scrub it away, the stain refuses to fade, and folks around here don't even like saying the name out loud. They just call it that cursed path, or the place you should never wander after dark. But I saw the old wooden sign nailed crooked to the tree that read Blackpine Hollow Trail, and the letters were carved deep like someone wanted to make sure no weather or no time could erase the warning. First time I parked my truck near the clearing, the air felt heavy like a storm was about to break, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the smell was something between wet iron and pine sap, and it wrapped around me until breathing felt thick like I was pulling in something more than just air. And I told myself this was nothing more than the woods being the woods, but deep down I knew something was off, because the silence was wrong. The way you can stand in the middle of a forest, suspect the chirping of birds, or the distant tap of a woodpecker, or the rustle of a squirrel. But here it was quiet in a way that pressed on your ears. He had found mentions of this place online, buried in old hiking forums. People spoke in half sentences and quick warnings like, don't take the hollow if you hear the crying, or never touch the moss if it moves back. And I thought at first it was all campfire chatter, the kind of stuff hikers make up to spook newcomers. But when I stood there with my boots sinking into soil that felt almost like wet flesh, I realized maybe the warnings weren't menace jokes, maybe they were confessions. What folks had seen and never forgot. When I stepped onto the trail, it wasn't like other paths I'd hiked across Appalachia. The dirt was black, almost like coal dust packed tight, and every step gave off a muffled crunch like brittle bones under the weight of my boots, and the trees leaned and crooked like they were watching me. Some trunks bent at odd angles as if they'd grown twisted by some unseen hand. And the deeper I walked, the more I felt a pull, not forward, not back, just downward. Like the earth wanted me closer. He carried a flashlight, though it was still late afternoon. The sun hadn't set, but the canopy above was so thick it swallowed light until it felt like dusk. No matter what the time was, and I found myself whispering out loud just to hear something, just to remind myself I was still there, my own voice cutting against the silence like gravel scraping glass. And every few steps, I thought I heard the faint crunch of another set of boots behind me, but every time I turned there was nothing, just a path stretching back darker than it had been before. People in town said hikers went missing here, and when their names came up in the paper, it was always framed the same way: lost in the woods, search called off, presumed gone. But folks who had family vanish out here swore something else was happening, that the hollow swallowed them whole and left no trace, not even bones. And though the sheriff brushed it off as wilderness accidents, the number of disappearances tied to this single trailhead didn't add up, and everyone who lived near Blackpine swore you couldn't explain it by missteps or whether. He told myself I'd only go on a mile, ate just enough to see if the rumors had any weight, but the Trail didn't feel measured in miles, it felt measured in something else entirely. Because I walked for what felt like an hour, maybe more, and the trailhead clearing never seemed far behind. And yet the hollow pulled me deeper until I was sure the truck and the road and any sign of ordinary life had disappeared. Then came the first sound. Not an animal, not a bird, not even the wind, but a long, low creak like an old porch swing, swaying back and forth somewhere ahead, and it made my chest tighten. Because it didn't belong out here in the woods. There were no houses, no cabins, nothing but trees and dirt and roots, but the sound came steady, rocking like a chair with no one in it. Moving to some rhythm I couldn't see, pressed forward, flashlight trembling in my hand, the beam cutting across the trunks until I saw it a rope, dangling from a branch, frayed at the end, swaying though no breeze touched the woods. And tied into the rope was a small wooden toy, a horse carved rough with one leg, snapped clean off, and it twisted slowly as if watching me, and when I reached out to still it, but what felt warm like it had been held in someone's hands. Just a moment before that was when the crying began. Crying was faint at first, like it was caught behind the trees or buried under the soil. But it was there, soft and high-pitched, almost like a child, though the tone was too heavy, too drawn out to belong to anything innocent, and the sound slipped through the air in waves, sometimes close enough that I swore it was right beside me, then pulling away so far that it felt like it was coming from the heart of the hollow itself. I froze with one hand still gripping that wooden horse, the rope swinging lightly as if stirred by the sound, though nothing around me moved, and the silence between the sobs was worse than the sound itself because it pressed in hard, making me feel like if I even breathed, the loud whatever was crying would hear me. Thought about turning back, my boots shifting slightly toward the trail behind me. But when I looked over my shoulder, it was wrong. The path I had walked just minutes ago was darker and narrower, the trees crowding tighter together until it looked more like a tunnel than a way out, and my chest tightened with the kind of dread you feel when you realize you're already too deep, and no matter how you tell yourself you can leave, you won't find your way out that easy. The crying swelled again, louder this time, and I forced my boots forward, telling myself it had to be some animal, maybe a fox or a bobcat, because folks said they made sounds that could trick you into thinking a child was lost in the woods. But my gut twisted against the excuse because there was a rhythm to this sobbing, the kind of rhythm only comes from something human. Trees began to change as I pressed deeper, their bark peeling away in long strips that revealed what beneath as black as the soil under my boots, and here and there I saw carvings gouged into the trunks, rough shapes of hands, faces, and something like eyes, all stacked in patterns that spiraled higher and higher. And my flashlight beam shook as I passed them, because no part of those carvings looked made by time, or whether they were deliberate. They were warnings set. One bend in the path, the crying stopped all at once, cut off sharp, like someone had covered the mouth of the sound, and the silence that followed was thick enough to choke me. I stood frozen, listening to my own heartbeat hammer against my ribs. I whispered out loud, "Hey, is someone out here?" But my voice felt swallowed by the hollow, like the woods drank the sound before it carried more than a few feet. Then a new sound drifted through the trees, the crunch of footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy boots pressing down on the black dirt, but they weren't posse swung the flashlight to the left and caught nothing but trunks and shadows. Swung it to the right and still nothing yet. The footsteps kept pace steady like something walking alongside me without needing to be seen, and no matter how fast or slow. When the sound matched me step for step, he told myself, keep walking, don't run, don't show fear. I tried to hold my breathing steady, but inside every nerve screamed that I was being hunted not by one thing but by many, and every crunch of soil beside me pushed me closer to breaking the trail open slightly ahead into a small clearing, a pocket where the canopy thin and just enough dying light slipped through to paint the ground in dull orange, and at the center stood an old signpost, its wood warped and split with age. And nailed to it was a sheet of metal rusted through, but the letters carved into it were still sharp enough to read, turn back, turn back, turn back. The words carved 3 times, each one deeper than the last. And the bottom edge of the sign was stained dark like dried blood that had soaked and clung over years. Footsteps stopped the moment I stepped into the clearing, and the silence crashed down again, and for a second I thought maybe I had imagined all of it, until the crying started once more, this time behind me but closer to close, like it was standing at the edge of the clearing waiting for me to turn and see. Didn't want to look, but my body betrayed me, my neck twisting slow against every instinct, until the beam of my light caught movement between the trees, and there it was, a figure, small, hunched arms dangling long at its sides, head bowed and hair hanging like wet strands of rope, and though the sobbing shook through its shoulders, the face stayed hidden, and the curtain of that hairy whispered, "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" But the figure didn't answer. It only raised one arm slowly, fingers long, and then pointing deeper into the hollow, and when my beam passed across its hand, I saw the nails jagged and black, curling into the flesh like they had grown too long and never been cut. Me could scream, to run, to turn back, to tear through the trees, no matter how tight they pressed, but my boots moved the other way, forward into the hollow, toward the direction that hand pointed, like the forest had decided for me that there was no leaving. Not yet, not ever. The figure kept its hand raised, and the longer I stared, the more I realized it was trembling, not in fear, but in some strange rhythm, like it was keeping time with something I could not hear, and the sobbing that spilled from its chest did not match the shaking of its arm. It felt rehearsed like a sound. It wanted me to believe, not a sound born of pain. I felt the hairs lift along the back of my neck because I knew it was trying to lead me, and not in a way that would save Mestel. My boots betrayed me with every step, crunching forward on that black soil toward where its hand pointed. As soon as I crossed the other edge of the clearing, the crying stopped, cut off sharp again, like a switch flipped, and when I looked back, the figure was gone, the trees empty and silent, as though nothing had ever been there at all. Trail narrowed to almost nothing, forcing me sideways at times, squeezing between trunks so close the bark scraped my jacket, and at one point I had to duck beneath a fallen tree, its wood hollowed and slick, and when I passed under, I swore I heard something breathing inside the log, like lungs dragging wet air. But when I lifted my light, there was only darkness packed so thick the beam refused to cut it. Ground began to slope downward, not steep, but enough to make me feel like was descending into something deeper than the forest itself, and the smell changed to pine and dirt fading into a copper tang like blood hanging in the air, and the further went the stronger it grew until my stomach rolled with every breath. Carvings return on the trees, shapes that twisted worse than before, not just faces and eyes now, but open mouths gaping wide, teeth carved sharp and uneven, and in some of them someone had wedged small bones pressed into the grooves like offerings, ribs, and finger bones small enough that my throat locked at the thought they might not belong to animals. Whispered to myself, this is just some sick joke, some backwoods ritual that locals pulled to scare hikers. But even as I said it, my voice shook, because the air told me otherwise, the weight pressing heavier with every step. Then I came upon it, a second clearing, this one wider, and at its center stood a stone circle stacked high with rocks slick with moss, though the moss here pulsed faintly like it breathed, glowing with a dim sickly green light. And on top of the stone sat another toy, this one a doll, its face burned black, but its eyes replaced with polished stones that reflected my flashlight back at me, and the way those stones gleamed made me feel like it was staring straight through. He thought about walking around it, but the trail curved tight, forcing me closer, and as I passed within a few feet, I felt heat coming off that doll, not like a fire, more like fever skin, like it was alive and holding something beneath the charred cloth. And when I leaned closer, I heard it faint, a whisper, not in words I could understand, but in tones rising and falling, like chanting buried under the ground. Moment I pulled away, the footsteps returned again, on both sides of the trail, moving slow and steady. But this time I caught something in the beam of my light, eyes shining low to the ground, not one pair, but several, like animals crouched just beyond reach. And they blinked in unison, reflecting the beam in dull yellow, and I realized with a chill that whatever they weren't watching me. They were waiting for meth trail, bent and dipped until the soil gave way to boards half rotten, as if an old bridge had been left to decay over a shallow ravine. Fluid sagging under my boots with every step, and when I reached the center, I heard it that cry again, but closer now beneath the bridge, like something was crawling under the planks, dragging itself slow. When I knelt to shine my light through the gaps, I saw movement, a pale arm thin, in vain pulling along the dirt below, the fingers digging into the soil as it clawed. Forward the arm vanished before I could breathe, gone into the dark, but the planks beneath me shook, as if whatever it was had slipped deeper underneath, was now following Juried across the bridge, my boots nearly breaking through the rod end. When I stepped back onto solid soil, the woods ahead opened to reveal what looked like a trail marker. A wooden post with another nailed sign, but this one had no letters, no warning. Only a carving of an open mouth, wide and jagged, and the deeper I stared, the more it seemed to pulse, like something waiting to swallow me whole. Then from behind me the crying swelled again, louder than before, closer than ever, so close that when I turned, the beam of my light brushed against the face I was. Not the face of a child, it was stretched too long, the skin pale and tight, the eyes black sockets that swallowed the light, and the mouth wide and trembling, spilling out that awful sound. And though the crying echoed through the clearing, the lips did not move. The sound was not born from its throat, it was spilling from the hollow itself, using the figure as nothing more than a mask. Every branch I brushed against seemed to shiver with sound, as though whispering secrets. I couldn't understand, and the soil beneath my boots changed to soft and spongy in places, almost sucking at my soles like the forest wanted to slow me down, and the air grew thick and sticky with the smell of earth, and something coppery deeper than any blood I had ever smelled. My chest tightened with every breath like I was breathing through a sponge. The crying had stopped suddenly, but the weight remained pressing around me like invisible hands clutching my shoulders. I knew better than to look back, but my neck betrayed me, twisting to see the trail behind me, and the path I had come from was gone, swallowed by shadows that moved and impossible. Waves bending and folding like the forest itself was alive and breathing. I pushed forward, my boots sinking into soil that pulsed faintly underfoot, and the trees leaned closer, the twisted trunks forming shapes that suggested faces, mouths, eyes that followed me, and every step brought a soft snap of twigs that sounded like bones breaking, and a low groan sometimes whispered behind me, sometimes below, like the earth itself was moaning. With some ancient pain ahead, the trail opened into another, clearing this one small and ringed with trees that leaned inward like a cage. In the center lay a pool of water, black as ink, reflecting nothing but shadows. When I shined my flashlight across the surface, I saw movement beneath it, the water rippling as though something large stirred just out of reach. I felt it watching me, waiting to draw me, and the toy dolls and wooden figures I had seen before were scattered around the edge, half buried in moss and mud, their faces cracked and eyes dull, some missing limbs, and the air carried a faint hum like a lullaby sung far away. But wrong, a lullaby meant to soothe, but instead twisting your stomach into knots. I realized the crying was coming from the pool now, but not just the crying. A low chanting joined in, faint voices rising and falling in tones that pricked the skin. He hesitated at the edge, the ground soft beneath me, and as I looked closer, I thought I saw shapes moving just beneath the surface, pale hands reaching upward, fingers long and thin, brushing the water as if trying to grab the world above. When I shined my light straight down, I swear one of those hands shot upward faster than thought, scraping the beam like it tried to pull me in, and I stumbled back, my boots slipping in wet mud, almost falling into the pool. A sudden wind swept through the clearing, knocking leaves and branches around me, and the whispering chanting rose louder with it. I turned the flashlight, desperately scanning the tree line, and there it was, the figure again, hunched, small and pale, and shaking with that same slow rhythm, arm lifted, pointing deeper into the hollow. And even at a distance I could see the nails curling black and thick like claws, and my heart hammered because I knew that following it meant going further, and not following meant being left alone. To whatever stirred in that black watery swallowed hard, the words caught in my throat. I moved forward, the forest closing tighter with each step, and the whispers followed me, brushing against the skin, and the trail began to slope down again, roots rising like ribs from the soil, and I felt the pull stronger, like the earth itself was drawing me towards some pit I could not yet see, and the forest around me groaned in rhythm with my heartbeat as if warning me not to continue. But I had no choice, because stopping felt worse than moving. Then a low croak joined the whispers, like a voice older than the trees, and I realized it was coming from the ground, the soil pulsing slightly under my feet, and the roots twisted, as if they wanted to trap me, their tips curling toward my boots. My flashlight flickered for a moment and I could swear I saw hundreds of pale faces pressed into the bark of every tree, all screaming silent mouths and empty eyes that followed me. As I went deeper into the hollow, the further I moved into the hollow, the heavier the air became, each breath thick, wet like I was sucking in water and not air. And the ground beneath my boots shifted constantly, soft patches, giving way then snapping firm as if testing my balance. I realized the forest was alive in ways I could not explain, moving subtly around me, pushing me deeper, twisting the trail until I no longer knew which direction led back to the truck or the road. Whispering had grown into murmurs, now voices, brushing against my ears as if they were inches away, though no one was visible. And the cries joined into layering with the voices, like some dark choir chanting something I could not understand yet, somehow feeling familiar, and my skin crawled. My teeth clenched because the sound carried meaning I could feel in my bones, like a warning, a promise that once they stumbled over a gnarled root, twisted like a snake, and landed hard, my palms scraping the soil. And when I lifted my flashlight, I saw a figure crouched among the trees, its face pale, and stretched eyes black holes, and mouth moving, but the sound came not from it, but from the trees surrounding it, as though the forest had chosen this shape to mock me. And I realized the chanting pulsed with its movements rising and falling in sync, and my boots carried me forward. Despite every fiber screaming to run, branches scraped my shoulders and arms as the trail narrowed again, forcing me sideways through a wall of trunks, the bark slick with moisture that smelled sharp and iron like the pool I had seen earlier. And shadows moved at the edge of the light, shapes too quick to track but always just out of reach. I could feel the eyes on me pressing from the darkness as if judging every step and every breath, and I whispered to myself, "Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking." Then the trail opened into a slope, descending steeply into a hollowed pit, the edges lined with jagged rocks and black soil, and in the center, a faint green glow pulsed weakly, and I knew immediately it was the source of the whispers. The chanting, the crying, all of it drawn here, and I felt the ground vibrate slightly. As I stepped closer, the pulse synchronizing with my heartbeat, and I realized I was not just approaching it, it was drawing me in. Dolls and toys were here to scattered among the roots, and stones cracked and missing parts, their eyes dull, reflecting nothing. And some had letters carved into them, names maybe, or warnings I couldn't decipher, and the air around the pit hummed faintly, carrying the coppery tang and a wet smell like something drowned long ago. I realized that smell was stronger than anything I had encountered before, and my stomach turned with pity. Knelt near the edge to peer into the pit, the green glow faintly illuminating shapes moving beneath the surface, pale limbs and thin faces that pressed against the earth like it was a membrane separating them from the world above. And when I shined my flashlight downward, I saw something shift suddenly, a hand reaching upward. I jumped back, my heart hammering, boots sliding in the soft soil. When I looked back, the edge of the pit was lined with small stones carved into eyes, staring at me, and they glimmered in the green light. He whispered, "No, no, no." Tried to take a step back, and the ground shifted slightly under my boots like it was breathing. I realized the pit itself was alive, moving subtly, pulling me closer. and the whispering grew louder, voices rising in a cadence I could feel in my chest. My bones shaking with resonance, and I wanted to run, I wanted to scream. But my legs betrayed me, carrying me forward step by step until the green glow filled my vision and the chanting felt like it had seeped inside Method. I saw the figure again crouched at the far edge of the pit, smaller this time, almost childlike, pale hair clinging to its face. It raised one arm pointing toward the center and the hand trembled slowly, the nails curling black and sharp, and my mind screamed at me to stop, to turn, to fight, to do anything, but I felt rooted in place, drawn toward that pulse, and the shapes moving beneath the soil, and I whispered to myself, please, let me wake up, please let this be a dream, but the hollow answered only with silence and a low wet groan. I stood at the edge of the pit, frozen, the green glow reflecting in my eyes, and every fiber of my body screaming to turn around and run, but my boots stayed planted like roots, growing into the earth, and the air around me throbbed with sound, a low resonance that seemed to seep through my skin and settle in my chest, making each breath feel heavy. My heartbeat thundered like a drum, matching the pulse of the hollow. Beneath, meth whispers had multiplied, now dozens of voices weaving together, high and low, sharp and soft, calling out my name, or at least I thought it was my name, because each syllable pressed against my mind and made it ache like the words existed outside the normal language, and the crying from before returned faint and distant, and layered beneath it all a rhythm that tugged at something primal inside me, urging me closer into the pit. He leaned forward despite myself, and the edge of the pit shifted under my hands, the soil soft and alive, pulsing beneath my touch, like it was drawing me into its depths, and for the first time I felt the weight of the hollow itself, pressing against my back and shoulders like invisible hands holding me upright and moving me forward, and I realized the dolls, the carved toys, the scattered wooden figures were more than objects, they were markers, guiding me into this place of hunger and waiting. Then the chanting rose louder, a crescendo that made my teeth rattle, and in the green glow I saw the shapes beneath the soil, writhed and coiled, pale faces pressed against the earth, lips moving and eyes open black, wet, reflecting my flashlight as if recognizing me as prey, and I could see the tiny hands clawing at the mud at the edges of the pit, reaching for the surface. I stepped back instinctively and my boots slipped in the wet soil. I nearly fell forward into the hollow pit. He turned to look at the figure again. It had moved closer to me, small, hunched arm raised, pointing at me again, the nails curling, thick and black, and even at a distance I could feel the pull of its gaze, like gravity stronger than anything I had felt in the world above. And I whispered, "Stop, please stop." My voice felt small, lost against the pulse of the hollow and the murmuring chorus of voices that wrapped around my head like thick rope branches. Roots along the trail bent subtly toward me as though guiding me closer every step. I took into the green glow, and the faint breeze that had once whispered through the trees vanished, leaving the air heavy and stagnant, and every exhale felt like hot tar filling my lungs. The smell of iron and wet moss was stronger now, mixed with something that smelled faintly of decay and earth churned by hands that had long been. Baridi took another hesitant step, and the soil beneath me squirmed and shifted, almost like something alive pressed underfoot. I realized the pit wasn't just a hollow in the earth, it was a mouth, waiting to swallow, and it wanted me inside. And the whispers became a chant, now louder, faster, forming a rhythm. I could feel vibrating through my teeth, through my skull, through my heart. I knew it was calling me deeper into the hollow. Beyond reason, beyond firth, figure moved closer. Still small and pale and trembling, and its arm lifted higher. The nails glinting black in the green light, and I realized the dolls, the carved toys scattered in the pit weren't just markers, they were warnings, and some bore initials, names carved, deep as if each was a record of someone who had been pulled in before. I understood in that moment that following this figure meant more than getting lost. It meant joining the chorus beneath the hollow and leaving the world above forever me. Chest heave, I swallowed hard, the air thick and coppery, and I stepped forward despite every instinct screaming not to, and the ground pulsed beneath my boots in rhythm with the chanting. I felt my body drawn forward step by step toward the green glow, toward the pit, toward the waiting shapes moving beneath the surface, and the figure ahead trembling, small arm lifted, and my breath caught in my throat, and I whispered, "Do not take me, please, do not take me," and the hollow answered with a low wet groan. Green glow pulsed brighter as I moved closer, my boots sinking slightly into the soft soil that seemed to lie beneath me, and the whispering voices rose louder, forming a chorus. I could feel deep in my chest, vibrating through my bones, and the shapes beneath the pit writhed and pressed against the mud, faces pale and wet, eyes open, and mouths moving, but no sound came from them. All sound carried from somewhere else, from the hollow itself, using them as masks. He stumbled forward, my hands brushing the jagged roots along the edge, and they twitched as if alive, curling subtly toward my skin. I realized the forest was no longer just around me, it was inside me, pressing into my mind. And every step made the whispers grow louder, sharper, insistent, pulling at memories and fears I had buried deep and twisting them into shapes. I could see in the corner of my vision pale faces blinking behind the tree's roots, stretching like fingers reaching for my ankles. Figure crouched smaller, now like a child, trembling and pointing at me, still arm raised. I saw the nails, thick black, curling long and shiny like obsidian claws, and I knew this was no human being, no creature I had ever seen in the world above, and the dolls and toys scattered around the pit seemed to shiver in anticipation, moving subtly without wind or touch. I realized they were alive in some small way, mimicking the shapes beneath the hollow, or recording what had come before. The chanting became a rhythm. I could no longer resist, every beat pulling me closer step by step, my body moving though my mind screamed to stop. I realized I could not leave the clearing, the trail behind that vanished, the forest behind folding over itself, and ahead only the pit waiting with its pale hands reaching out, and the figure pointing, and the green glow pulsing. I whispered, "I am not ready, I am not ready," and the hollow answered with low groans, reverberated through the ground beneath me. Stepped closer to the edge, and the soil shifted under my weight, soft and wet, and pulsing with the rhythm of the chanting, and I leaned over slightly to look into the green water, and the shapes beneath it writhed more violently, pale arms reaching up, clawing at the mud, pressing against the surface, pressing toward me. I could feel the pull of the hollow stronger now, tugging at my legs, at my chest, at my mind. Like gravity stronger than anything I had felt above, and I realized if I fell and I would not come out again. The figure raised its arm higher, trembling, and I noticed the head tilted slightly, like it was watching me through the black hair hanging in front of its face. I realized with sudden clarity that it was not pointing at the pit, it was pointing at me, at my hesitation, at the small fear in my chest that still dared to resist the pull, and the hollow seemed to respond to that fear, strengthening the pulse of the water beneath me, thrumming against my body as if mocking. By hesitation, he reached for my flashlight to steady my hands, but it flickered slightly. I realized the green glow had begun to seep into the forest itself, the trees reflecting a faint sickly light and shadows moving where no shadows should be, twisting into shapes, faces, mouths, claws reaching toward me. And the whispering became a chant again, louder than my own heartbeat, louder than my breathing. I felt my knees weaken under the weight of something ancient and patient pressing down from the hollow above and below, and all around me. Chest heaved, my mind screamed at me to run, to leap, to fight, to do anything, but my body betrayed me, moving forward step by step, my boots sinking into the soft pulsing soil, the edges of the pit curling slightly as if alive, and I realized the hollow was not just waiting for me. It was part of me, already feeding on my fear, my hesitation, my slow insistence of movement toward it. And the figure crouched small, trembling and pointing, and the green glow pulsed in time with the chanting. And the shapes beneath read Chinji whispered again, "Do not take me, do not take me." And the voices rose, a chorus, laughing now or screaming. I could not tell, and the forest around me shivered and groaned like it had been holding its breath, and now exhaled in a low rumble. And I felt the pull of the pit stronger than my own will, and realized in that moment that nothing above would save me, nothing from the world I knew could resist what waited here. The pull of the hollow grew stronger each step toward the green glow, my boots sinking deeper into soil that pulsed beneath me as if breathing, and the chanting voices swelled in my head, layering over the crying, over whispers, over groans, and I realized they were not coming from the trees or the pit or the figure. They were coming from everywhere and nowhere, and I could feel them pressing against my mind, shaping my thoughts, twisting my fear into something tangible that pushed me forward. The figure crouched small and pale, arm lifted, pointing, and I noticed now that its head tilted further back, the hair falling away just enough to reveal black hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth stretched unnaturally wide, trembling as though it were a hinge, and the whispering rose in rhythm with its trembling lips, though no sound emerged, and I realized the chanting had learned my pace, adjusting to me, anticipating each hesitant step like a predator reading a heartbeat. Edges of the pit writhed violently, the water pulsing in time, with the voices beneath it, pale arms and hands clawing toward the surface, reaching toward me. I felt my chest tighten as if the hollow itself had coiled around my ribs and lungs and pulled in a slow, suffocating embrace, and my flashlight shook in my hands, throwing light over shapes in the soil and roots and dolls and toys that all seemed to move subtly closer to me. In anticipation, he whispered, "Do not take me, do not take me," and the whispering became a chorus echoing my words back at me, twisted 100 ways. and the ground beneath me shifted and pulsed, and I realized it was alive, not soil, but muscle, and membrane and breath beneath the earth that had been waiting for me to step this far, and the figure raised its trembling arm higher. I understood it was no longer pointing, it was reaching toward me, reaching to pull me into the rhythm of the Halawi. Tried to step back, but the trail behind me had vanished, swallowed by shadows, and the trees had bent inward, forming walls of black bark that glistened faintly in the green glow, and every twisted root and branch seemed to lean toward me, as if pressing with invisible weight, and the whispering chanting, crying had layered into a single pulse I could feel in my teeth, in my skull, in my chest, in my knees. My body moved forward, though my mind screamed. Stop. Dials around the pit shifted slightly. At each step I took, some on their sides crawling. Like insects, their heads tilting in unnatural angles, some missing limbs replaced with twigs, and stones, their eyes dull, reflecting the green glow. I realized the forest had arranged them here to mark the way to the hollow center, each one warning for those who refused to heed the rhythm of the earth and the pulse of the pit. And my skin crawled with the thought that the dolls had once been human, or worse, had always been alive in some way I could not understand. He reached the edge. The pit again, the green glow reflecting in the water, and the shapes beneath writhed violently, pale faces pressing against the mud mouths, opening wide, hands clawing and grabbing at the surface. I felt the pulse stronger now, the air around me thick and coppery and warm like a lung filled with decay, and the figure crouched smaller still, trembling arm lifted, and my chest heaved. I realized I had no choice. I was drawn, and the chanting rose to a roar, echoing in my ears with a rhythm that matched the pulse beneath my feet. He whispered one last time, "Do not take me, do not take me." And the hollow answered with a wet groan and a shiver that ran from the soil beneath my boots, through my spine into my teeth, and I felt myself teetering at the edge, and my vision blurred as the green glow filled my eyes, and the shapes beneath the water writhed higher, closer to the surface. I realized I could feel them reaching inside me, reaching for my fear, my hesitation, my very soul, and the figure's arm quivered, trembling higher, and the pulse rose faster and faster, until it felt like my heart would explode. Green glow flooded my vision, and the chanting pulsed in my chest, every heartbeat synchronized. But the rhythm beneath the soil and the water and the pit writhed violently, pale hands and faces pressing toward the surface, as if the hollow itself were alive and aware of my hesitation and my fear and my every thought. I realized the figure crouched at the edge, small, pale, trembling arm raised, was no longer guiding me. It was part of the hollow, its body a vessel for the rhythm, for the pulse, for the weight, and she stepped forward. Despite every instinct, my boots sinking into the soft pulsing soil, and the dolls and toys at the edge shifted closer, tiny limbs twitching unnaturally, as if the forest itself moved them in time with the chanting, and the whispering voices layered into a chorus that seemed to resonate inside my skull, bending reality around me, and I felt the hollow pressing from every direction, shaping the air and the earth and my own mind into a single unbroken force that wanted me within it. The edge of the pit trembled beneath my feet, the water bubbling slightly, and the pale shapes beneath pressing against the mud with desperate strength. I realized they were not just beneath, they were reaching out to me through the the soil through the air through my own body, and I whispered, "Please do not take me, please." And the chorus rose a crescendo that echoed my words and twisted them into a sound that vibrated through my chest, making it ache and pulse with the same rhythm as the pit. He looked at the figure, its black hollow sockets and wide trembling mouth fixed on me, and I realized it was not a guide or a warning, it was a lure. It had waited for me to hesitate, to fear, and my own hesitation had fed the rhythm. The hollow, and now I was its prey, and my chest heaved with panic, every breath thick and coppery. My legs moved forward despite every scream in my mind to stop, to flee, to do anything but move closer to the pit and the green glow and the reaching pale hands and faces beneath the water. Dolls on the edge twitched again, some rolling toward the pit, some leaning unnaturally, their eyes reflecting the glow. I realized each one represented someone before me, drawn into this rhythm, trapped by their own fear and hesitation, and I understood in that moment that the hollow fed on the will of those who came here, and the pull I felt was not physical alone. It was mental, spiritual, emotional, a force I could not resist, and every step closer made the pull strong. Eerie whispered, "Do not take me, do not take me one last time." And my voice was lost in the chorus of whispers and chants that now layered with the crying and groaning, and I felt my body teetering at the very edge of the pit, the soil soft and pulsing, and the water rising slightly as if in anticipation, and the shapes beneath writhing, pushing upward with a strength beyond anything human. And the figure's arm quivered higher still, the black nails gleaming in the green glow, and I realized that in the next moment there would be no turning back. Pulse beneath my feet matched my heartbeat, faster, faster, building to a climax. The hollow seemed to inhale deep as if preparing to swallow everything above it, everything around it, everything I had been, and I felt the pull stronger than gravity, stronger than life itself, tugging at my chest, at my knees, at my mind. I realized with a cold certainty that the forest, the dolls, the pit, the figure, and every whisper, every cry, every pulse of the green glow was alive and aware, and waiting for me to join it fully. The edge of the pit pulsed violently beneath my boots, and the green glow filled my vision so completely that I could no longer see the trees or the trail or anything above ground. And the chanting had become a deafening pulse in my chest, a rhythm I could not resist, a vibration that bent my mind. And the shapes beneath the water writhed violently, pale hands pressing through mud, clawing at the surface, desperate and patient, and the dolls and toys along the edge twitched closer, almost crawling toward me as if alive and aware. I realized every step I had taken had been measured, every hesitation accounted for by the hollow figure crouched, small, pale, trembling arm lifted, quivering, and black nails gleaming in the green light, and I felt its gaze like weight on my chest, like gravity pressing down. I realized it was no longer separate from the hollow. It was part of the rhythm, part of the pulse, part of the waiting, and my body moved forward though my mind screamed, "Stop, flee, resist anything to avoid joining it," and the chorus of whispers and cries and groans layered into a force that enveloped me entirely, teetered at the edge. The soil soft pulsing and alive, the water beneath swirling with pale shapes pressing. Then my chest heaved and my vision swam, and I whispered one final time, Do not take me, and the hollow answered not with words, but with a pulse so strong. It seemed to enter my bones and twist my very will until resistance felt impossible, and I felt myself pulled step by step toward the pit, toward the green glow, toward the writhing shapes reaching for many hands brushed the edge and the soil rippled and pulsed beneath my fingers, soft, warm, and alive, and the shapes beneath writhed higher, pressing against the surface, clawing and reaching. I felt their cold fingers inside me, my fear and hesitation feeding the rhythm, and the figure's trembling arm lowered slightly as if satisfied, as if it had drawn me fully into the waiting, and I realized in that moment I was no longer moving of my own will. I was part of the hollow or red-eyed dolls. At the edge shifted again, some falling into the pit, twisting and turning as if claiming new victims, some leaning closer, serving me, and I felt the pulse of the hollow synchronize. My heart beat perfectly, faster, and the whispering, chanting, crying became a singular voice, a force inside me, reshaping my mind and body into the rhythm of the pit, and I realized the forest around me, the trees, the roots, the soil, the very air were extensions of the hollow, reaching out to enfold me complete. You tried to scream, to pull back, to fight, but my voice was gone, my limbs heavy and unwilling, and the green glow consumed my vision, and the water beneath rippled violently with the pale hands and faces pressing higher, and I felt the pull of the hollow drawing me in fully. My mind screamed in silent terror, and the figure crouched small and trembling finally vanished into the pulse, into the pit, into the rhythm, and I understood that nothing above would ever retrieve me, and then with one final shudder the pit swallowed everything. I was aware of my vision, my hearing, my heartbeat, and I became part of the hollow, part of the rhythm, part of the whispering chorus, part of the pulse beneath the soil, the green glow fading into my mind, as if I had always belonged here, and the forest closed around the clearing, and the dolls and toys lay still once more, silent and waiting for the next hesitant soul to stumble into Blackpine Hollow Trail, and the wind whispered faintly through the trees, carrying a chorus of cries, a lullaby warped and eternal, and the hollow pulsed patiently alive and aware and unbroken.